Welcome to The Journey, and today's journey features a self-published author, an accountant, and also a passionate mental health advocate based in Huntington Beach, California. A lifelong athlete and thrill seeker, our guest grew up immersed in sports like soccer, or football if you're in England, field hockey, surfing, and snowboarding. After experiencing a life-changing manic episode, our guests found their voice through writing their book, Bouncing Back from Bipolar, which I know that we'll talk about. A memoir about their journey towards healing, hope, and happiness. And incidentally, this podcast is called Bouncing Back from Bipolar because we will be sharing how you can get a copy of this book. But our guest's mission is to inspire others living with mental health by sharing their story with honesty, strength, and vulnerability. Our guest is happily married and thriving and travels the world with her husband and dreams of becoming a motivational speaker to help others find joy, purpose, and resilience. And welcome, Eva, to The Journey.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me today.
You're welcome.
I just wanted
Now,
to take a minute and share my story, my bipolar journey with the rest of the audience
you can.
and hopefully inspire others today.
I hope it does as well, because I'm not saying this in a way against bipolar, but or any mental health, but it's often a stigma that if you got mental health, that's on you and people will look at you differently. This podcast, I always say when it does come to mental health, this podcast is to break that stigma and to help people understand that it's okay to be bipolar, even if you have a crappy time or whatever, mental health, you can still be you. And I just believe the passion that you're going to show and share with us will help others too.
Yeah, so when I was first diagnosed bipolar, I had no idea how my life was going to be today. And I'm really proud of everything I've been through and how things have turned out since I've been diagnosed. I was diagnosed in 2014, my senior year of college. And, I've always been a very determined person. Sports have really shaped me into someone that doesn't give up and likes a challenge. So when I was diagnosed, I was really determined, to live a normal life and get back on track despite being manic and having high-low cycles that made it difficult to work in the beginning. And I didn't graduate in 4 years like I had planned, but I still finished. I still graduated, and it was definitely a curveball that I wasn't expecting, but I'm glad that I went through what I did because life isn't supposed to be easy.
And as you know, when you're in a car journey or even a train journey, plane journey, sometimes you have to go, if you're in a plane, you have to change altitude. If you're in a car, you have to go on a different road. It doesn't matter because that is part of the journey.
Yeah, so everybody's journey is different. I had an easy life up until college. Like, school was always easy for me. I was an A student. I was also a tutor in college. I tutored accounting and finance. I played sports in college. I played field hockey and soccer, and that was a great experience for me. And then senior year was the after everything ended, things started getting hard for me. My mind changed. The switch went off in my head, and I couldn't understand what was going on with me, why I was having racing thoughts. it was definitely a scary situation because I felt like I didn't have control over my mind at that point. It was, you know, new to me. I didn't know much about mental health. I think that, schools should probably teach more about mental health so that if they do come to these circumstances, they're more prepared. So I was kind of, a fish out of water, didn't know what was going on, didn't know what mental health was, never even really heard about bipolar disorder, even though I was a very educated college student. So,
Yeah, and you talk about education in such a way. When you are in school, I don't know what it is in America, and not probably people will tell me in the comments, but you was taught the basics like sex education. You was taught that from the get-go, unless your parents didn't want you to learn that. But there was never any education for learning about mental health. Yes, you probably had social education, but you had no understanding of it unless you was sat down with a counselor and the counselor said to you, let's talk about this. And then it'd be unwrapping it there. But it was never clear lessons unless you were studying it as you grew older, like in psychology.
yeah. And then also when I was diagnosed, I found out that it was hereditary. Like my grandpa was bipolar. I have cousins that are bipolar. So I didn't know there was other family members that were bipolar and that it was like genetics that it
Mm.
could run in the family. And I didn't find out from my parents till, I got diagnosed after a manic episode I had on campus my senior year.
And um, were you alone? Were there people around you and understood, or like I said,
It,
did you feel alone?
it happened at like 6 a.m. in the morning, and like barely anybody was on campus. I was trying to see a counselor. I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I felt like out of control. I was manic at the having a manic episode, and I didn't know what it was at the time. I just couldn't sleep. I was up I was like up for days. I was going to the gym at like 3 a.m. I was acting erratic and my roommates knew something was off. Um they couldn't help me because it was so early in the morning. I was just on campus, like pacing back and forth. And then I started getting aggressive and yelling. And then campus police came. And then the real police came. And then I was taken out on a stretcher in an ambulance to a mental hospital where then I was diagnosed. But it was a whirlwind sequence of events.
Yeah, and it's that isolation, I believe, when you are in a manic, yes, people who don't know you would think scary. But if, being by yourself, that's what makes it more scarier because you want to reach out. Even if you're manic, you want to reach out and try and reach out to someone who you can relate to.
Yeah, and I really didn't have anybody to talk to about it at the time because I couldn't even understand what was going on with me.
Mm.
So, once you get diagnosed, you can have therapy, psychiatrists to talk to. But I would like for me, I would love to be somebody with that could offer peer support because I think peer support is also important. Like a therapist and a psychiatrist are helpful, but it's also good to have somebody you could relate to.
Mm. Totally. And that's where, like you have now, you've got your husband. He's your peer support as well as your husband because he's there for you. And that's a good solid basis to have.
Yeah, I am very thankful for my husband. He's been supportive. When I had my relapse, like last year, so 2024, it was like a 10-year, basically 10 years since I've been diagnosed. I got diagnosed in 2014 and I relapsed in abroad on a trip while I was traveling. and I was stuck in Istanbul airport and they wouldn't let me on the plane to get home. And I'm on my layover, and my husband took the first plane out to go get me because I was in a foreign country by myself traveling, trying to travel home, and I just couldn't get home because of I was having a manic episode.
Yeah, and that's like I said, it's a scary thought when you are alone. Going into the present day then, and we talk about your book in this segment, do you feel like being able to write about your journey with bipolar is helping you feel, understand yourself more? Because obviously, when you get diagnosed and you get in the help, you're still not completely aware. But when you was able to write it in words, did you say, now I can see myself a lot clearer?
It was hard going backtracking to write the book. Like I had to go through everything all over again, but it was almost like freeing to put everything on paper and like everything I've gone through, especially like when I was writing the early stages from 2014, I actually had to go back through police reports and reread. Like I had to get police reports of me being arrested when I was bipolar, and it was interesting to see, how the police described me, how I was acting, erratic, dilated pupils. They assumed I was on like substance abuse, like some sort of illegal substance when I was really not on any sort of drugs. I was literally just mentally unstable at the time.
Yeah,
So it was hard to go through some of the police reports and like see how they were describing me or my actions towards them. But it was really an eye opener. It really like showed me full circle what went wrong, how I was in acting to them and their point of view versus my point of view. So it was definitely interesting, and it was really good writing everything down on paper and just getting everything that has happened since I've been diagnosed down. And it was definitely a good experience overall.
yeah. And you say about reading the reports. Sometimes when you read the report, you sometimes come across how you think, was I really like that? Did I do that? And you don't think of it at the time because in that manic state, you don't think of what's happening directly then and then because you don't think of what's existing. It's like the world just shuts itself off and you're in that manic state and you're thinking me against them. And then when you read back, it's like, I didn't mean to be like that, but why was it? And then you read further and you understand a bit more. You read psychiatrist
Yeah.
reports. Now, they're messy to read, but that's the nitty gritty, and then you can piece it together yourself.
Yeah. So cops are definitely my trigger, which isn't a good trigger to have because you get in trouble, legal trouble with that.
Yeah.
So, I would never in my right mind go against the police, try to fight the police, anything like that. But in your manic state, logic goes out the window.
Mm,
You are just easily agitated. If they approach you, you usually don't act normal and like how you normally would in that situation. So, it's definitely it's definitely not good to be out in public around police when you're going through a manic episode. I'm just speaking from my experience. I don't
yeah.
know how other people are when they're manic, but you feel like you have like superpowers and you could fight off anyone, and you get like these superhuman strength. Like I am really strong. Like
Mm.
when I'm going against the police, I go in like Hulk mode, and not good. It's
And,
not good once you get arrested at that state. But
and I'm not laughing intentionally, but it's just that image that you can just picture in your mind when you are manic. You are that, like you said, that Hulk where you're at super strength and you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, you just go into I go into fight mode, which, isn't really ideal. But it I was labeling myself a criminal for a little bit there because I did go to jail for some of these instances.
Hmm.
And it only happened from like 2014 to 2016. And I never had any I was a really good kid like up like before this. So it was hard for me to go to jail
Hmm.
when I never did like anything wrong before. So I don't have any like before that I had no criminal history and I still don't see myself as a criminal. I just see somebody that was misunderstood and just like not in the right mental state.
And that is the thing. Again, I'll say about mental health, it is a misconcepted thing that people like to say, you're this, you're that. No, they got to look at the bigger picture to make it understandable. Because if they just look at the
Mhm.
single point of, oh, she's aggressive, he's fighting, she's fighting, you get that label, you get that stigma. And I don't like that label, that stigma. It's about seeing the bigger picture around the circumstance of why you are in that circle.
Yeah, and I hope that the police have gotten a little better over the years, like that they understand mental health a little more because there was an instance where this lady was gonna I forget what state it was in, but it was just recently, like this year. There was a lady with boiling hot water, right? And there's a bunch of police around her, and she's like definitely not in the right mental state. And she said she was gonna pour boiling hot water on them, and the cop shot her. So I don't think boiling hot water really relate should be as I don't well in my opinion I don't think that's how the situation should have gone. Obviously she
Mm.
was not in the right mind and what she said isn't really probably what she meant, and the fact that she was shot over it is very disheartening, and it's a really scary situation when police don't really understand people's mental conditions and they might be acting how they might be acting, and their words don't really, you know,
It's
their
about
words are different than they were
it's
than
about
they.
being educated to understand it fully is my way of how I
Mhm.
look at it. And yeah, I'm not a trained psychologist or psychiatrist, and I always say this in interviews, but that's all they need. Better understanding, better training,
Better
better,
training, yeah,
yeah,
better training, definitely. Or like, or like the first instant I was arrested, my dad told them like she's bipolar. So I don't know if it wasn't like obviously they all knew my name at some point. They all knew who I was. It was like I was downtown Huntington Beach. I was causing trouble. I was skateboarding around. I was like, you know, but they should have in their system that I am bipolar. I
yeah,
don't know if they do that. I don't know if they put like if you have a mental health issue, I don't know if they actually put like your
mental
what's wrong,
state,
like
yeah.
your diagnosis or something.
Mm, I don't think they do.
They
I
should.
I know from how it is in England. When I was in England, they say if you got a label, yes, they will know you're a vulnerable adult. And they say, okay, you got to have someone with you. So, for example, if you got bipolar or even like, autism, for
Or
example,
even they would want to know if you're like schizophrenic or
yeah,
something, if you're seeing things.
they ask those questions, but it's not on your record. And they keep asking you every time you go, if you get into trouble. I'm not saying that get into trouble every day, and I don't say people are, but they get their regular people. They should
Yeah, I
know
think
from
it's
record, okay, that's happened. We've asked them those questions, and it's on record. Okay, we get a doctor to come in, police surgeon, whatever you want to call it. We can
mhm.
get that diagnosis. It can go on record. It doesn't have
Yeah,
to be
I think it should. I don't know if it I don't I know back then it didn't because they would have known how to handle me differently if they put it in their notes or whatever. But also, like when I was in Istanbul airport at my layover and I couldn't get on my second flight, the police were asking what kind of medication you are on. What kind of medication are you taking? So that was different experience than from here in the US where they just assumed I was on illegal substances.
Mm.
So I did like that they knew, this girl is probably on some sort of medication, not on some sort of drug.
And that's where paramedics, EMTs are good for because they know automatically if it's a manic. They're not fully qualified doctors, but they know in the mental health from, and it does say in the handbook I read many years ago, you may not be a psychiatrist, but you know the patients when they are happy, sad, and wanting support.
Yeah,
And I
and you
and I
should you should
and
be
I
able to
just feel
tell.
it, and it's not intentionally to have that label because it's not about having that label, but even if you go abroad, you don't have your passport card or passport, physical passport, the paperback one, as I call it. It doesn't say in your passport, this person is 36, for example. He's a male. He's from England. I'm not 36, by the way. I'm 41. But the fact it, but it doesn't say in there he's also got this mental health condition. Unless you scan it, I don't know what it says underneath, but it should still be in that sort of documentation there.
Yeah, yeah, I do think
Even if it's not visible, it'd be good to have in such a way that they can actually swipe it, scan it, whatever, and say, okay,
mhm.
this is David, this is Eva, this is what's wrong with David, this is what's wrong with Eva.
Yeah, and I think that would be helpful. Like, and I openly tell people I'm bipolar. I don't really share it with like when I'm trying to get a job because I don't want that stigma that
Mm,
goes around with it because I'm a great worker. I'm a great accountant. In the beginning, it was hard to work because I was trying to find the right medication for myself. And like sometimes when you're on too high of a dosage and you don't have the just the right mix of medication, sometimes you get sleepy and tired and it's hard to do an 8-hour shift.
mm.
Like you want to go nap, you don't want to be working for 8 hours. But I made it work. I eventually, right now I am on the right medication. I think that my relapse happened just from being overstimulated. I was in Kazakhstan for a wedding, and it was like a Indian wedding. It was a 3-day event, and it was just like a lot going on, and I wasn't sleeping well, and I wasn't on my regular schedule of medication.
Mm,
So yeah, I do thrive today, and I named my book Bouncing Back from Bipolar because after my relapse, after I was in the hospital for 10 days in Istanbul, I flew back and I went to work the next day. I didn't miss a beat. And I was just, my coworkers have no idea what I was doing, where I was, like how bad it was, like how sick I was at the time. But I came back and nobody knows exactly what happened. Nobody knows all the flight from hell I went on, the crazy incidents at the airport. Like I came back like nothing ever happened. I just came right back.
But it doesn't
Didn't miss a
define
beat.
you. That's the key element. It doesn't define who you are. So even if you have a bad time, you don't have to come back and justify, oh, I had this that time because you don't have to say, when you're in work environment, who's actually going to be there apart from the odd few friends, if you do make friends? Who's going to actually understand you and be there for you?
Yeah, I had only told like really one person a little bit about what happened, but it's it's crazy to think like when you're bipolar, you can go from the lowest of lows to the highest of highs.
Mm,
And it's amazing what your mind can do when you are, on your medication, when you have proper help after being manic. And it's crazy how you can just, snap out of it and just be back to normal in no time. it's a really great, like the mind is a powerful thing. It
Mm,
really is.
yeah, it is. So people are going to ask this. Your book is out there now, and you spoke about what it's called. Where is your book available?
So this is a picture of my book, Bouncing Back from Bipolar.
Which
This
is a
is me
picture
in
of you.
Dubai.
Yeah.
This is actually me. And it's available on Amazon. So if you search Bouncing Back from Bipolar on Amazon, this book will come up and be available on there.
And I'll make sure the link is in the description afterwards so people can actually click on it and then look for themselves. Now,
Yeah, it's a good read.
and I'll make sure people are aware of it. Um, the last question I like to ask, and it's about moving into the future and moving into helping others because you are an advocate and people be wanting to know, can they get in contact with you?
Mhm.
First of all, can they get in contact with you if they have any questions?
Yeah, I do have an email and a website. I don't know if you could provide the link to my website, but
I can do it in the
my my email is HG for Heather Gandhi, mental health at gmail.com. So HG mental health at gmail.com.
okay, and that'll be in the description afterwards as well. And the website is
Bipolarbounceback.com, but
Bipolar Bound.
I'll send you the link
Thank
for that.
you. And she will send those links to me. So when this does get uploaded, you will see it and it'll be seamless. Um,
Thanks, David.
no worries. Last question, Fen, and you heard me touch upon it. You're helping people move in their journey and understanding themselves. In this case, bipolar mental health, whichever one you want to class it as. For the sake of this podcast, it's about bipolar. People with bipolar, you want to help them move in their journey. What would you say to them to help them progress to be the better themselves?
So what I used to tell myself when I was going through mental health issues and I couldn't think straight, I said this truth shall pass, which means this state is only temporary. Like you can get through it and things will get better. So just trust the process. Whether you're trying new medication or you don't think that you're going to get through it, just remember that things will get better. You just have to have a strong mindset and just don't give up on your mental health and keep working towards it so that you can succeed and live a fulfilling happy life.
I agree on that. And on that, I like to say, Eva, thank you for sharing your journey with us today.
Thanks, David. Take care.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ammie Harrison. I just published another book, and this is the first hard copy I've released. Let's claw right into a sneak peek. Hi, I'm my Galaxy Brat. Error. It is becoming clearer. Y'all probably think I'm annoying. Turns out they all just plain boring. I'm just being me, the realest version. Sweet on the inside, tell like it is on the outside. Yes, I embrace love, never hate. But honesty flies in my mouth like a dove. Be careful before it's too late. If you want to read more, visit the link in the description. Meow at you later.
Parsons. The narrator is Kate Barton. Director and producer, Darren Street. Tim Parsons would like to thank family and friends for their support with the paramedic Chris venture. The series is dedicated to the memory of his father, Reverend David Parsons. Copyright Tim Parsons 2020, all rights reserved. Unauthorized use, copying or sharing of this audiobook is strictly prohibited. This has been a Voice Reel studio production for Tim Parsons.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I've just been listening to the Paramedic Chris children's books on audio again, and I just love it because they've given a tribute in one of them to my dad as well, who passed away a few years ago. I love audio books, and it's great to walk around, and it's great to sit at the computer, if you're out jogging or wherever, to listen to them as well. All four of the Paramedic Chris children's books are available on audio book from Amazon. Go and take a listen to them. You won't be disappointed. You'll hear what happens when a community pulls together and supports one another. The best thing is to pop over to my website, paramedicchriskidsbooks.org, and you'll see the links on the shop page. Keep safe, everyone, and thank you for being you.
The Journey podcast explores stories of personal growth, challenges, and life-changing moments. Each episode dives into unique experiences, offering insights and inspiration for listeners navigating their own paths. I believe everyone has a story worth sharing. If you'd like to share your journey with David and others, email your story to wisewords1983@reborn.com, and it may be featured in a future episode.